Hello, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining. My name is John, and I am super excited to be joined by both Kate and Leighton. So, going to start with a quick intro. You can see my name is John, just like I said, and I actually am also an EF Gap Year alum. I did my program back in 2018. I'm also now an EF Gap Year admissions consultant. So I obviously was impacted by my program and am now here working full time, helping students and families learn more about what these programs are. I probably have been speaking to a lot of you already here tonight. So in that case, great to put a face to the name. I'm also on the board of the Gap Year Association, which is the organization that provides the standards and accreditation of all different Gap Year program providers. So that is me. Again, today we are joined by two of our fantastic alum, Kate and Leighton, who went on our GAP programs. This panel will be Q&A style, but we're going to first start with a bit of context setting of understanding what our programs are, who they're for, the eligibility, along with some sample itineraries, but something that I will just suggest for all of you here who want to know more specific information on any one program, please reach out to your gap year consultant. They're going to be reaching out to you regardless after this webinar. But again, for more specific information as it applies to you and your family, definitely reach out to your gap year consultant for more context on any of these programs. So with that said, I'm going to do a quick intro for both Kate and Leighton, but I also will leave it to them. Kate joined us on the Voyager program back in the fall of 2023 after getting accepted to Middlebury to start in the spring. We also have Leighton, who joined us on our fall Changemaker program. And Leighton, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you are departing tomorrow for our Mosaic of Spain program, which is really exciting. Might have those dates messed up. But will both of you come just off mute real quick? Maybe Kate, we'll start with you, and Leighton, you can go afterwards in terms of just giving a quick intro of who you are and a bit about your program.
Hi guys, I'm Kate. I'm from California, like San Francisco area, but I go to school out here in Vermont. I went on the Voyager, like, and that program was kind of like a travel around program and an explore, and it went to Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, and Japan last fall, which was awesome.
Amazing, Kate. Can't wait to really dive into the inner workings of that program. Leighton, love to hear a little bit more about you, the program you just came back from, the program maybe you're excited to depart in very soon.
Yeah, so my name is Leighton. I'm from Austin, Texas. I saw Texas in the chat, so shout out. So I was just on the Changemaker program, which is also a travel around program. So started in Costa Rica, and we went to the Dominican Republic, Peru, and Ecuador as well. And it was also focused on service learning. So there was a lot of service projects in each country that we got involved with the local communities. For Mosaic of Spain, it's a pretty different change. It's a big change of pace for me. It's a lot more stationary. So I'm starting out in Malaga, and then I'm going to University of Granada, where I'm taking a few classes. Yeah, so very different.
Amazing, Leighton. Super excited to explore that a little bit more. And for everyone here, we will dive into all these programs and what they look like before getting to the Q&A. So with that said, Leighton, Kate, you guys can just sit tight as I go through these programs, and then I'll invite you back on stage for the Q&A portion. So with that said, I want to give everyone a little bit of context into EF and who we are. The first question I always get is, what does EF stand for? It stands for Education First. We've been around for around 60 years now. Actually, this year we're celebrating our 60th anniversary, so big year for us. And in that time, we have sent millions of travelers all across the world. And in those instances, really what binds them is this educational travel experience, knowing that the real best way to learn, or one way to learn, is definitely outside of the classroom doing some culturally enriching and immersive activities. You might have heard of us, maybe from our EF Tours division. It's the largest provider of its kind. If you have ever done like an eighth grade field trip to DC or a spring break trip with your high school, something along those lines, more than likely you did it actually with EF. As you can see here, EF is a sprawling organization. I am one of 52,000 team members. There are over 600 offices in 114 different countries. So very large organization that really specializes in these educational travel programs. You can see the 17 different divisions that make up EF, along with us specifically, EF Gap Year, which kind of fits in to the program portfolio. And so to understand what sets EF Gap Year apart from the 17 different divisions of EF, I want to speak a bit about the type of students that we see enroll in an EF Gap Year program. So, for our programs, most students, when they are, approaching their senior year of high school, are met with a lot of different milestones in order to determine what is next, after they, cross the finish line and graduate from high school. For many, that is college or uh, work or any other, professional development they want to pursue after college. And more than likely, you may be someone like myself or like Kate and Leighton who are open to a more unique way of maybe starting their post high school experience. There are many different types of students, and we'll see here. We'll learn a little bit about Kate and Leighton's reasons for taking a gap year along with mine. All of them will be slightly different, and that is the really unique thing about our programs and the students who make up these programs. We have students who come who are in search of a little bit of discovery and pause and break from academics. We also have students who are very self-motivated and are utilizing these specific programs as a leverage point for or rather an accelerant to whatever may be next in their life. So I'll start quickly describing the two different types of programs that we offer. We have our semester programs, and we also have our full EF gap year program. And again, I will defer to speaking with one of our EF Gap Year consultants, which probably invited you to one of these webinars, and we'll be following up with you after this to see what your thoughts are. So to get, again, a more concise or detailed overview, definitely connect with the Gap Year consultant. But just some high level things to keep in mind as you want to understand these programs. Here are all the pieces that are included that go into all of our programs that really sets us apart. All of those flights, transportation, a lot of the meals, all the activities and excursions and accommodations. And again, we'll get more into these details later on. I also want to highlight a bit of the structure and support that makes up all of our GAP programs. So our programs are comprised of group sizes of around 20 students, give or take. Embedded within that group of 20 are also all of your on-program support system. You'll have your EF tour director, who is like your main person in charge. We also have your EF student life coordinator as well, who is another aspect, almost like an RA mentor figure embedded within these programs. You also have your gap year program advisor, who offers kind of virtual support, weekly check-ins. They lead a series of pre-departure webinars. And we also obviously have the fellow cohort that you're traveling with. So I'll first speak a little bit on our gap semester programs. Gap is a key word in this that I just want you to keep in mind. I would probably relate the word gap to a word like dynamic. These programs are moving to a lot of different countries. Kate and Leighton both did our gap semester programs, and we'll see a little bit of a highlight of their itineraries now. Here are the different itineraries for our gap semester programs. As you can see, very dynamic. The main theme to keep in mind is in each one of these locations, we want to provide students with unique and exciting opportunities that are culturally relevant and exciting for students who are using these programs as, again, an opportunity to self-discover and leverage what may be their interests for whatever is next in their life. We also have our study abroad programs, which we've alluded to that briefly in regards to Leighton's Mosaic of Spain program. These are really unique experience, almost thinking of it as a way to start college abroad. It's a cool way to maybe keep that in mind. If I said gap is dynamic, I would say study abroad is a little bit more stable or stationary, as the word Leighton used. And I say that because you can see 8 of our different program offerings here. And again, you can click on our website. You can speak to a gap year consultant. They'll break the itineraries down in a lot more detail. The things to keep in mind are in each one of these locations, you're going to be living and learning with EF Study Abroad. So you're going to be taking university classes at our local partner university, but also there's built in like field excursions and different trips that are planned throughout the semester and different focuses in each one of these programs, as you can loosely see here. The credits are all transcribed by Colorado State University. So after completion of the program, your credits will be transcribed by that, and that you'll just do that normal transfer process as you always might. We also have our full EF gap year program. This is our most popular program selection. And when I say full year, it's actually like a full academic year, the fall semester, winter break, and then a spring semester. And I'll show a quick overview of what the first semester looks like. It actually starts off in Europe, where 6 weeks of what we call guided exploration that moves into 3 weeks of another culturally immersive activities in Australia, and then another 3 weeks in Thailand. That's just your first semester of the full gap year. Very dynamic. Like I said, again, the intention to really give a lot of high industry engagement opportunities and culturally relevant experiences for students to leverage. Then they go home for a winter break and then move in to semester two with a lot more intentionality. And here you actually have an option to either select to do an international internship or to do an immersive language learning semester. That is actually what I did myself. I studied in Rome, and you can see the different locations we have offered for our programs. Okay, a lot of information here. I know I speed ran through all these programs, but really we're here for Kate and Leighton. And again, if you have any specific questions on these programs, how they're comprised, the enrollment process, the applications, all those details, please connect with your gap year consultant to better understand what makes up these programs. So with that said, Kate, Leighton, if you guys can come back on screen, we'll jump into the Q&A portion of the program. So let me now stop sharing my screen here so we can see all of us here. Ooh, is this working for me? Okay, so something I always like to do in these panels is maybe to first like rewind time back to when you both were potentially students like the ones who are here in the audience tonight. And the first question, again, maybe Leighton, we'll start with you and then we'll bounce over to Kate, is what were you feeling when you were in their shoes in terms of contemplating, potentially going on a gap program?
Yeah, so I think I had definitely a lot of doubts about whether or not it was okay to take a non-conventional path, or if it really was, instead of just going straight into college, if that's what made sense. But after I learned more and kind of delve deeper in the itineraries, it almost felt like a no-brainer to me. Like it was almost like I had to do it. Like I was going to miss out on such an important opportunity in my life. So I think there was kind of a moment, almost like a tipping point, where I realized that there was no way I was going to, if I didn't do this, I was going to regret it. And after that, I was sold.
Amazing. Kate, we'd love to hear from you as well.
When I first kind of started processing that I was going to do a gap semester, I think I was pretty nervous and overwhelmed with the different options of what I could do. But I found EF, and I also realized that this is the time in your life you're never going to have this much free time or this moment again, and you really have to take advantage of that opportunity. And do what you can with it. And I think EF really stood out to me because of all the different options that you can do. And I think it just made it a little more manageable for sure.
Amazing. And maybe more on that, Kate. Walk me through a bit of how you found out about these programs and maybe how that conversation went with your family as well as you were contemplating the different options that were in front of you.
Yeah. So my parents were pretty involved with it and at first, and then I kind of took the reins and found all these different options. I kind of just found them on the internet, and also where I go to school, because I started a semester late, they had a bunch of recommended places. So I ultimately looked at that list and chose EF. And then I kind of had my heart set on the Voyager program. So I came to my parents and essentially pitched it to them. And they had so many options on what I could do, but I think I had my heart set. And then once they saw it, they were like, this is amazing. They didn't think it was real.
Leighton, would love to hear your version of that as well in terms of the discovery and pitch to your parents, if that was even the case.
Yeah, so I think I had a little bit of a different experience. with finding my gap program. So I realized that I wanted to take a gap year in like the later half of high school, and I knew I wanted to improve my Spanish. And so I actually talked to my Spanish teacher about if he knew any resources, any gap programs that would cater to that. And then EF was one of the companies that he recommended. And then I just looked at the list of programs from there. So yeah, it was a little different. It definitely took me a second to get my parents on board, but after they saw the itineraries and saw how much I would be learning, they were all in on it as well.
I definitely relate to that. I actually had like a kind of a split household where my mom was like super into the idea of taking this gap. My dad needed a little bit a bit more convincing, and I think ultimately, I was someone who really is similar to both of you, kind of gravitated to the different program selections and really believed in that for myself. And I think just after that conversation and exploration of and joining events like these, it made me feel a little bit more equipped that, okay, yeah, this actually does seem like something I'm into. And again, with that buy-in, I think my dad then also recognized a little bit more of allowing me to pursue something that I'm interested in, which I think was good. So something that I'm curious on, because it probably looked a little bit different from both of you. Maybe Leighton, you can start with your experience on the process from actually like doing some gap year planning and then also doing that alongside the college planning process. How do those two things integrate with one another, if so?
So for me, they definitely were one and the same. I knew that my parents definitely wouldn't let me take a gap year if I didn't have a plan for college afterwards. And so that was definitely a part of my process. And so I was planning on what program I was going to be on at the same time that I was applying to colleges in fall of my senior year. And I deferred from university. I'm going to Virginia Tech next fall. And yeah, I was doing that at the same time that I was figuring out what EF program I was doing.
Kid, I know a little bit different of a start for you. I was someone similar who did actually a fall semester program and then started college in the spring. Tell me a little bit of like the process at Middlebury. Was it like difficult to kind of enroll in any program, or was it pretty open ended? Just walk me through that process.
Yeah, Middlebury was pretty similar in the sense of like applied to college, and because I got in a semester late, that's when I started doing figuring out my gap stuff. But it was so easy. I think all these schools really encourage like they like you taking a semester. They don't mind at all you taking a gap year. And they really encourage that because I think when you come back such a different person that or such like so much change. And I think they embrace that. So Middlebury especially, um, they kind of there were so many options and everyone did a different thing. Um, and they loved it. They were happy with any option that you did.
I also had held conversations with different colleges. One more recently with the director of admissions over at UPenn, who again, big promoters in just what a gap year. To your point, Kate, students who come off of those gap years tend to return to college that much more appreciative of that educational environment, more engaged in campus life and their academics, and a better reflection of that campus brand, which at the end of the day, all these schools want. Schools like I know Duke is another one, for example, that actually gives scholarships to students who want to take a gap year, again, because they recognize the students who do that are a better reflection of that Duke brand. So again, really, I think cool and exciting stuff there. So with that in mind, we're going to forward time a little bit. So we're going to travel through space and time and maybe talk a little bit more about the on program experience, maybe the first couple days. So, Kate, we can maybe start with you. When you first arrived on program, what were you feeling? What was that like?
Well, I think it's funny. I consider my first moments of program the airport before because I think those were my most nervous moments because my cohort, at least we had two cohorts, so it was around 60 kids. So I was traveling with like 15 of them that day, and I was totally nervous. Um, and I think those first days, you're so nervous and you're so excited and you're getting to see so many cool things. But it's important because to remember that like everyone is so nervous in those moments, and it's not just you. So I think as long as like you're open to meeting new people and new experiences, like that's super important in having a successful first few days.
Sure. Leighton, would be curious to hear your experience as well in terms of those first few days, what you were feeling like.
So it feels pretty surreal when you land in that first country. Nothing quite like feels exactly like it's actually happening because there's so much new information and you're meeting so many new people. I felt like the first couple of days felt like they went on for months because there was just so much happening. And I just like couldn't cram all that information in my head at once. So that was a big part of that experience. It was a little overwhelming for sure, but then you kind of get past that and you enter like a honeymoon phase almost with your program where you're like everything is starting to make sense right at the beginning. Everything is still really fresh and exciting. So that's how I felt kind of going into the second week.
Yeah, I love the way you put that there. And I also, to both of your points, in terms of like the first couple days, it is kind of surreal. Not like, wow, like I did this. Like I'm on the airplane, like I'm doing this program. And I think what also helps too is that it's not just like you sign up and then you go. I mean, there's a whole like kind of onboarding process where you get to meet the different students and get to meet the gap year advising team, which I think helps alleviate that a little bit more. So you kind of have a familiarity of who am I going with, who are these people, what is EF gap year, just as we appropriately on board towards that program. Maybe moving in a little bit, a couple days, a couple weeks into the program now. Talk to me about like the group dynamics and like the people you met. Like, how long did it take? A little moment to like get in the groove of meeting people or like making friends, having those friendships develop. Lee, maybe we could start with you and then popcorn it back to Kate.
So, I mean, I know this isn't the case for everyone, but I really like meeting new people and I like that experience. And so it was really exciting. And I tried to go out of my way to like introduce myself to everybody right away. I know some people kind of flew under the radar initially, and then it was almost like you get to discover who this person really is like later on in the trip. And so that was kind of cool too. But I think it's really hard to not build strong relationships when you go through a program like this with a pretty small group of people. I mean, it's like a sports team or something where all of the highs and the lows, like someone's like glasses breaking or whatever bad event happens, it rains 3 days in a row, and you're all going through that together. And so through the highlights and the lowlights, you just kind of like have all these shared experiences. So it's really hard not to become close with everyone.
It's a great way you worded that. Kate, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, like Leighton said, I think there's definitely like a bond that forms between you and your cohort. And I also think I couldn't say better things about my group, but I think it's also because these kinds of trips are attract a certain type of people, and those people are like courageous and like willing, open to do anything. And so I think those type of people are really awesome to hang out with. And well, honestly, everyone there just always has such a positive attitude because they're excited to be there, which I think just makes it so important and makes it easy to make friends and bonds.
I feel like it's interesting as well because you come out of like, a 4 year or however it might be for some students, high school experience. And I say that because you can do these programs at different points of your college career, but the majority, after 4 years of high school and however your high school experience was, you're at a really cool inflection point where you can kind of almost discover and toy around with like who you want to be as you enter college and what personality are you outside of that high school bubble where you went to school with the same people for X amount of years. And I say that because there are certain aspects of my own personality that I discovered on this program through understanding the other students' personalities as well. For example, I realized I am not a great planner, but what I do well is I befriend people who are great planners, and I kind of understand my role within a friend group. Are there any pieces like that for both of you, like any defining moments of your own character or personality as you're going through the program that start to like stand out a little bit more, compared to the previous versions of both Kate and Leighton? Kate, maybe start with you and go back to Leighton.
Well, one thing I remember we did during orientation in the first few days when you get to whatever that first location is, we kind of wrote down our goals for the trip. And one of my thing, and I keep it in my bag still, was just to like, I was like, be okay with being alone. And I think just work on my independence a lot. And coming back from this trip, because um, I definitely like have improved on that, and I think that's my biggest change where it's like I can go grab a meal in the dining hall alone and not worry about it. And I think just understanding yourself better and what you need to like rest and recover has been like a game changer for me.
I think that's super powerful. Also, I'm going to make a comment real quick. I think in about 2 minutes, these lights might turn off. I have a ring light on me. So just so as we know, hopefully that powers through. But Leighton, passing it on to you in terms of like some of those defining moments of your character, if you found any.
So I was put in kind of a unique situation on my program because not a lot of people spoke Spanish, and I was one of the few people who were at least conversational. And so I found myself to be pretty useful for everyone on the trip right away, which was a pretty cool experience. And it also, I think it gave me kind of a sense of responsibility. And I don't know, I think that just like helped me grow. I don't even know how to exactly describe how how exactly that transit like transition to who I am now. But I think I put a lot of weight on being able to help people communicate with locals, and even in some cases like letting people know about allergies and other languages. Like that's a stressful thing to have to take on. Like someone's putting their life essentially in your hands to figure out how to use your skill. So I think just yeah, that sense of responsibility.
Which I think is interesting too in terms of like understanding where you find fulfillment as well. Like, there are times where you could have like really said, nope, I don't want to do this and defer to whomever like is there on program with you to just take more ownership. But you kind of took it upon yourself to find that. And I think that's what's also exciting about this too. I mean, I'm just kind of extrapolating off of that story you said, but I think that's what's also pretty unique about a program like this, where you get to see in those moments, throughout, even though it's just 10 weeks, there's a lot, and I feel like 10 weeks feels short in the grand scheme of things. It feels like a much larger experience, in my opinion. But um, another moment that I think is interesting to call out is, through that roller coaster of 3 days in a row when it rains, or if someone breaks their glasses, or you get a stain on your favorite shirt. There could be bigger or smaller instances that have presented itself. But how did you both understand or deal with those challenges, and maybe understanding yourself in a spot where you need to think on your feet or something, anything along those lines? Were there moments where you struggled or felt challenged that you actually learned from? And maybe Leighton, we can start with you, and then we can sneak it back to Kate.
Um, yeah, I think I had a few moments like that in probably that second half of the trip because I think you just get so tired. So I had some where I was like, I would keep doing these activities every day and I felt like I wasn't appreciating them enough or as much as I should have been. So I think what was helpful for me was to just talk about it. I had a great SLC student life coordinator. So I would always go to him or go to my other friends because I wasn't the only one feeling that way, so I think that was helpful to talk about and just to get others' opinions on that and see how they were feeling.
Yeah, Leighton, we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so I think for me, a kind of a struggle I had early on is I realized that I relied on other people's approval a lot. And in this new group of people, like after we kind of got to know each other a little bit and it was all surface level stuff, and you get to know each other a little bit more, and then, people start to realize they need to figure out how to like work with each other, even if they disagree on some things. I think that caused some conflict for me where I wanted to be as agreeable as possible. And that was something that I had to work through kind of in I would say the middle portion of the trip.
I think it's interesting to understand yourself within like support systems as well, whether that be a support system on program, SLC, the fellow students within your cohort, but also support systems back home as well. Like one thing I realized was, oh, I love staying connected with my friends and family, like whether it be through text messages, FaceTimes, whatever it may be. That I like learned that on the program, that this was, part of me that I kind of craved. And so the more aware of kind of who you are and what's important to you in those situations, I think the more learning and growth you can just kind of accelerate as you're, going through a program like this. Also, just want to talk, if you guys can just speak a little bit. I love hearing some highlights on program in terms of like, things that maybe you expected or didn't expect that like really like stood out to you. And Leighton, maybe we could start with you and then we'll move it to Kate.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about the Changemaker program was when we were either working on service projects or just engaging in our local communities that we were staying in and getting to meet people and make connections and make friends with people from, all of these different places. I found that especially one of my biggest highlights was in Cabarete in the Dominican Republic. We were working at Inspire DR. I mean, it was super fun, barely work, really, but we were there at Inspire DR and we really made good connections with all the kids. It's an after school program that were there. And I still talk to some of them to this day that were a little closer to me in age, and I developed really good friendships. And so I think moments like that were definitely my highlights for sure. I mean, obviously, of all the cool nature stuff too. I mean, we went to the Galapagos and that was like amazing for so many reasons. But I think for me, the human connection elements were just a real standout.
And I think that's what's really cool about the change maker too, because you get a lot of those wildlife environment pieces, but then you also get some meaningful like human interactions that like you can kind of supplement that. Um, Kate, would love to hear from you as well.
I had a few favorite moments. I think some of my big ones were hot air ballooning in Australia was like amazing. Um, but sorry, I'm blanking. And just like island hopping in Thailand. But I think my favorite moments were like the unexpected, unconventional moments where you were just like sitting on the tour bus and then everyone like breaks into song, or like going out to a dinner and suddenly there's like live music surrounding you. I think those are the moments that are like warm my heart the most, because those are like the moments that you're not really expecting. Um, so I think those are my highlights.
Yeah, I think it's like also like some of the things that are like between the lines of the itinerary are like some of the most incredible moments where you're just like, after a long day, you're on the bus and like you just laugh hysterically, over like this silliest little thing that happened earlier in the day or whatever it may be. Like those are the moments that like really stand out to me when I think about my program. I didn't experience kind of um, similar. It was also, it would look like our Pathfinder program the most, but back in my day there weren't any cool names. Just was called Gap Semester. It also incorporated moments of like the language learning piece, like the second semester of the gap year, where I was taking language classes at the EF Language School in Rome, and also just like having such a unique, culturally immersive experience. Eating some of the local foods and buying something off the a street vendor, like things that you would never find in like your local day to day, were also like moments I know I'll never forget that like I really hold close to my heart. So with that said, I want to migrate a little bit or fast forward in time a little bit to like towards the end of the program, and would love to hear like what did the final, we talked about the beginning couple days, your emotions, what did like the final couple days feel like? You're nearing towards the end of the program. Maybe Kate, we can start with you and then we can move it to Leighton.
My last few days, I think I was like, I'm like a very emotional person. I was like heartbroken. I was so upset for it to end. But I think I was also really ready to go home and see my family again and talk to them about it. Um, like I knew I was going to stay in touch with all of like the amazing people that I had met, but those last few days, I think it was really awesome because I think it brought our group even closer together somehow, because everyone was really taking in those last few days, and which made it sad, but it also made it, I think, for really special.
For sure. Leighton.
Yeah, I think I completely agree that those last few days definitely did feel really special. You almost got way closer in the last couple days because you knew that, I mean, you'll never be with this exact same group of people ever again. So that's a weird feeling. It almost feels just as surreal as the start of the trip where you're meeting all these people for the first time. And especially as we were winding down, like, and you start reflecting on all the things that you're doing, like, wow, we just did all of this in 10 weeks. Like, how is this possible? I don't know. Yeah, there's so many moments that it really starts to build. Like, was this all just a dream, or did we actually just go between 4 different countries and do all this stuff?
Oh, 1000%. And you're right. There is a weirdly similar feeling beginning towards end. I mean, they're opposite, but they're similar in that way, which I think is is really, it's like a yin and yang two parts of a whole, which I think are cool. And then maybe having a little bit of a step out of it. Kate, you have a little bit more experience there. Leighton, a little bit more recent for you. I mean, talk to me about like those initial feelings, maybe to this moment of like how it potentially benefited you, that experience, and maybe how you're trying to incorporate that into the tomorrow's experience.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's also wild to me that I'm leaving again tomorrow.
I don't think we're spending enough time on the fact that there's a flight that you got to catch tomorrow. But
Yeah, literally less than 24 hours from now, I'm gonna be on my way to Malaga. So I can't wait for that. But I mean, coming back after my first program, I mean, I instantly felt a lot more independent because I just got so used to doing things, not necessarily on my own, but kind of just being able to really forge my own path in ways that I hadn't really thought about doing before. And so things that I would never do by myself, like I would always want to have friends around back at home, I suddenly was like, this just feels normal to go out and do this. So that was a big one. And I think also just I got a lot more appreciation for almost the mundane in my daily life back home, like things like what protein bars the store sells, or whatever, or just the view from my own window, things like that you just don't really think about until you don't see it for such a long amount of time.
oh, I mean, 1000%.
I would say I feel exactly the same. It just made me step back and appreciate how much I have here and how lucky I was to do such an amazing experience. And it made the moments of my daily life, I think, so much more important and impactful. But I remember when I first got home, my parents were like kind of annoyed by me because every time they would ask me about the trip, I was kind of moody because I just was so upset that I left all my friends. And eventually they just told me I had to snap out of it. But it was fun.
Which is probably something that they were proud of at the end of the day, that you got a
Yeah.
worthwhile experience from, which I think is sweet. And then, okay, maybe on that note, in terms of like post gap reflections, how did you like utilize or incorporate some of what you've experienced and learned and grown from into and your college experience that started only a couple of months later?
Um, I would just say it made me feel so much better about starting college because I had that experience of going into a new experience with a bunch of new people, so I kind of had that like checked off and I felt like I was super ready for that. Um and I will say after my gap semester, I went to Switzerland for a month and like all by myself, which I had never done before. Um so I think it made that really special and just it made that feel really easy, which was kind of crazy to think about. Um, but I think it just made the college transition so much easier. Like I had already, well, I went to boarding school too, but I had experienced being away from my whole family and just meeting all these new people.
And I think it's not crazy to say that, because I think what's um, really interesting about putting yourself in a really new, unique experience. This is a path that 99.9% of the population doesn't have the opportunity to take, or the privilege rather. And I think being able to really like sit with that and say, wow, I'm doing something that is so interesting and unique and exciting, is a pretty surreal moment, as you are like understanding, who you are in your collegiate professional career. And I was someone who also started college a few weeks later, and found that if I could travel the world and with people I don't know, and in places I've never been before, and languages I don't speak, and then I'm going to college, an American school with regular students who just transitioned immediately from high school into college, that felt like a piece of cake for me, because I did such a like almost cold plunge before that, where everything else felt that much smoother. And I know, I think this may be speaking on behalf of potentially Leighton's perspective. There was a question in the chat of like, are you scared? I think it kind of warps your perception of like what fear really is in a world where you have the agency to make these decisions in your life, and be confident and excited about that. But maybe, Leighton, maybe I won't put words in your mouth. I mean, how are you feeling having your flight tomorrow?
Honestly, I have no fear at all. Yeah, I'm just excited. I think comparatively to the first flight on the last program, I mean, it's such a different feeling. I'm like, I get to kind of do it all again. Like I get to meet a new group of people, get close with them again, and I mean, all this experience in a different part of the world. I mean, I feel like there's nothing to be anxious or worried about. It's honestly a great feeling. Like I can just look forward to it.
Which is, it almost feels like that's how humans should feel. We should feel excited about these new and exciting moments of our life. That it's cool, like having this time where you're in it, that you've actually had the courage and confidence to say, you know what, like I'm gonna do it. From that decision, it makes other decisions that much easier. At least I think so. But in terms of um, Kate, where you're at now in terms of the academic portion, how do you think you're taking that step back from straight academics maybe helped, or your experience at college and your like studying?
I was a little bit nervous to go back to school just because I hadn't done it in like 8 months at that point, or I don't even know, 9 months. But I would say like I felt like I had nothing to worry about when I got back to here. Um, and I think it was super easy. If anything, because it makes you so much more like reflexive, it almost helped you like with your writing a little bit, which I found. But it was like super easy stepping back into the academic world.
Oh, great. So with that said, and I totally agree with you in terms of like my academic pursuits. I was actually someone, and maybe you can speak to this a little. I mean, both of you, who was a little bit more indecisive in terms of when I was in high school, like what I wanted to, what would feel I could see myself studying or pursue. I was someone who had interests in a wide range of fields and topics, and I felt a little overwhelmed by that interest and kind of having that step back from the pressure of like needing it all figured out at that right moment. I think allowed me to like have some clarity in that as well. And Lee, maybe we could start with you and finish with Kate in terms of like, do you feel like your gap influenced your thinking of like potentially what you would want to do? And I know, Leighton, you're kind of in the middle of it, but still, like, at this point of time, do you feel like it had any influence in what you want to study or what you can see yourself doing in the future?
So I think I had a pretty solid idea of what I wanted to do before taking my gap year. It was actually kind of a part of why I wanted to take a gap year, which is going into international relations. I want to work in international development aid. That's kind of the area I want to go into. And I think more than anything, the gap year solidified that as the future that I wanted to go into. And I thought it was really, I mean, an experience that was so irreplaceable to me in kind of really strengthening my desire to pursue that and what that could actually mean and look like. I mean, after working in NGOs in South America, like what could my future actually be like? And so I thought that, I mean, that kind of just settled it for me.
What a really cool resume ad too that you can put, in supplement to the major, which I think is pretty cool. Kate, would be curious to hear your thoughts on that too. Was there any like strengthening or discovery from your gap program that influenced your college decisions?
Yeah, I walked into my gap semester not really knowing where I was going to go in the future. And I still don't really know exactly what I want to do, but I will say I feel so much more comfortable with that because I was sitting there with a bunch of people like around a campfire and they're like, I have
There we
no
go.
idea what I want to do. And I think it made me feel a lot better about that feeling. But I will say I've always been really interested in kind of like environmental stuff. So we also did a bit of service and experiencing those like environmental impacts up close kind of solidified that. And I've done research now when I'm at college based on what I was doing in Gap, which was cool.
That is so cool. Well, with that said, looks like they're kicking me out of here. But I would love to kind of end it with from both of you to give some insight into all the students and parents and families that we have here tonight in terms of any advice or insight or tips for students who are in this position, thinking about potentially maybe doing a gap. What would be some things that you would tell them? And Kate, maybe we could start with you and end with Leighton.
Um, my advice would be to really open yourself up and for you to be okay to be scared when going into these programs. But I think you're really going to embrace this time and you're going to take so much out of it that it's going to be life changing. I've never met anyone who's regretted taking a gap year or a gap semester. Um, and in fact, like everyone I've met has only really, really strongly encouraged it. So I think it's okay to not know what you want to do and to um, like be scared. But I think just being open to new possibilities is really important.
Beautifully said. Leighton, close us off.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think you should learn to enjoy the discomfort of it because that's how you're going to get the most out of this experience. My prime example is try all of the different foods. I mean, that's like the gateway into any new culture, and you get so much out of foods that you've never even heard of before. I mean, like you have to do that, I think. And also, I'd say don't be afraid to go out of your way to find stuff that you enjoy or like want to find in these other countries that aren't baked into the itinerary. I mean, you have free days and free time. So if there's something that you really want to do, I think you have to. I mean, it's like you owe it to yourself to go and figure out how to get it done and experience it. In other words, I mean, what Kate said, just, I mean, embrace everything and make the most out of the experience because, I mean, it's a really unique opportunity.
You're so right, and it's a unique opportunity for students who are post high school and also at any point in your college career. And I think what's interesting is that like there will always be college uh, available for you. The window to take a gap, decreases pretty exponentially, as you get later into your years and as you enter the workforce and things of that sort, which is funny. Most parents I speak with always say, oh, I wish I could do a gap program. I wish I had this back in my day because they recognize just the value of what this specific time in our life is. So with that said, thank you both, Kate and Leighton, for such great, valuable insight and perspective. For everyone here in the audience, I would love, I will share contact info if you guys want to hear more about Kate and Leighton's story. Also, if you want to hear more about any one of these specific programs and itineraries and how it can fit into your own goals, along with the enrollment information, how to actually get started with thinking about the enrollment for this, please reach out to your gap year consultants. I'm probably one of them. Probably have brought you here. We'll be reaching out with you to talk more, but super excited for you. And again, Kate, Leighton, thank you for spending your Wednesday night with me. And Leighton, safe flight tomorrow. Super excited for you and what a life changing experience you better have. So, with that said, thank you both and have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.